Okay, item number 5, items referred to committee, and we will now be conducting a confirmation hearing. Welcome to the confirmation hearings, at which Council will consider the appointments of Douglas Dykes as Director of the Department of Human Resources, also known as Chief Talent Officer, and Scott Rourke as Chief Information Officer, also known as Chief Transformation Officer. For a little background, the Department of Human Resources was established under the county charter. It's our understanding that Mr. Dykes is currently serving as Chief Talent Officer and will be made permanent upon council confirmation. The Department of Information Technology was established by ordinance in 2012 under the direction of the county executive. Mr. Rourke is also currently serving as interim Chief Information Officer and will be made permanent upon council confirmation. The hearing process will proceed as follows. The nominees will be offered an opportunity to address their qualifications, motivations for seeking the position, and outlooks and plans regarding the office. Council members will then be offered the opportunity to ask questions of the nominee. We will do so in rounds, allowing each council member to ask 2 questions per round, until all council questions have been answered. Once all questions have been asked, we will entertain a motion to recommend that council approve or reject the nomination at the next regular meeting. If we are not ready to act on that motion today, we will defer making the recommendation. Assuming a motion to recommend approval or rejection has been made, council will vote on that recommendation at its next regular meeting. Thank you, and let's begin. Madam Clerk, I understand Mr. Dykes is here. Is he here now? I'm sorry. Come on forward. You want to read the resolution, Madam Clerk?
Yes, I will. A resolution number 2016-0028. A resolution confirming the county executive's appointment of Douglas M. Dykes upon his taking the oath of office as Director of Human Resources and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Good afternoon, Mr. Dykes. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Just go ahead and give us your presentation, and then we'll have some questions for you.
Okay. All right. I'm happy to. Good afternoon, everyone. I figured I'd start off with who I am personally, and then I'll talk a little bit about my education. From there, I'll go to my work history and then tell you what my plans are, my immediate plans and hopefully long-term plans for my position. So I am from Cleveland. I was born and raised here in Cleveland. Lived in Cleveland Heights most of my life. My mother is 83 years old. She told me to mention that at these hearings. And she is originally from Pittsburgh. My father was born and raised in Cleveland. I have a sister, biological sister, and then I also have an adopted sister. We adopted her from Haiti when she was about 15, and she's back there now doing missionary work in Haiti. I am married, beautiful wife, Phyllis, and I have 2 children. We have a 21-year-old son. That's another story for another day. And I have a 10-year-old daughter, which is, they're both of our kids are the love of our lives. So this journey for HR began 20-something years ago when I was in retail. I was a regional retail manager for a major men's clothing store here in Cleveland. And I decided that I wanted to do more. I wanted to do more when it came to helping people, to actually be a part of people's transition. So I decided to go to school, and I went to Tri-C, which from Tri-C I obtained 2 associate degrees, one in business management and the other business management with a focus in IT. From there, I went on to Cleveland State, where I majored in business again, but with a focus and a concentration in human resources. Graduated from Cleveland State in 1993. and right after graduating from Cleveland State, began working at RTA. I will say, though, that I am in my final semester now at Cleveland State, working on my executive MBA, and looking forward to graduation in May. Upon my graduation from Cleveland State, my undergraduate degree, I was recruited to RTA as an intern in their compensation area. And so what I handled at RTA was all of the job classification, writing of job descriptions, writing of tests, writing of assessments, validating of testing and assessments. And so I did that job for a number of years, transitioning from a non-paid intern to a compensation analyst. Did that for 5 years, and after that I was asked to be the manager of employment and recruitment at RTA. I did that for about 3 years, and my remaining time at RTA, I was promoted to be manager of human resources over all of human resources. After spending 11 and a half years at RTA, I was recruited to go to the Houghton Arboretum in Lake County as their chief HR person there. Wonderful experience. Didn't know what an arboretum was until I got there. Learned a lot about woody plants, but also had an opportunity to work with some great people. And at that time, my executive director, CEO, Elaine Price, which she's actually an employee here at the county, we were able to take an organization that for 75 years was basically a family-oriented organization and bring a lot of professionalism to the organization. And so it was a great accomplishment for a place like the Houghton Arboretum. From the Houghton Arboretum, I was recruited to the top HR position, at the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, where I spent 7.5 years there. My most recent experience is at the Sewer District, so I'll talk about some of the accomplishments that we experienced at the Sewer District. One, when I walked into the Sewer District was having a lot of internal issues as well as external issues as it related to the human capital element of the organization. There were no processes in place. The hiring was, I think it took about 4 months to hire a position at the Sewer District. No one understood the benefit structure or the benefit plans. We were actually in the process of terminating it's kind of ironic, we were terminating our relationship with our benefits broker at the time because we were paying extremely high renewal rates, and the benefits really weren't covering what the employees needed. Along with the training element of the Sewer District, it really wasn't in place, so we ended up hiring a lot of people from the outside because a lot of the people on the inside didn't meet the minimum qualifications. So there was no succession planning, there was no preparation for employees to move in various positions. We had a wonderfully expensive ERP system called Oracle, and we were using it like a word processor. And so we spent $7 million to bring Oracle on. Over the years that Oracle was implemented, we spent a lot of money to keep up with the licenses and all of the maintenance fees, and we were using it like a word processor. So under the umbrella of all of those issues, Julius Chach brought me into the organization to move things forward. Some of the accomplishments that I'm very, very proud of, Oracle is the ERP system of the Sewer District, and we do benefits enrollment online. recruitment online, benefits changes online, all of the things that an ERP system is supposed to do has been implemented and is being utilized at the sewer district. So that was a significant accomplishment. We took the hiring from, I want to say, about 4 months to 42 days is our average hire, which is a significant accomplishment for a public organization because of a lot of the hoops that you have to jump through in order to hire. Along with hiring in 42 days as an average, we also changed our focus. So we began to hire really, really qualified people. So let me speak to that a little bit. There's nothing wrong with what we call in the HR business recycled employees. It's not a bad term. But typically, recycle employees go from one public organization to another public organization. I mean, I came from the sewer district. I'm here at the county. We design our organization and our benefits, which I'll talk about in a little bit, where we were able to recruit the best of the best. So yes, we did recruit employees that worked from other organizations, other public organization, governmental organizations. But we went from 80% recruiting from other public organizations, government organizations, to 40%. So what does that mean? What that means is that we were able to reach out into the community, into the private world, into the nonprofit world, and bring people into the organization. For example, our recent hire for our director of IT came from a private organization, and I'll summarize this. Won a lot of different awards in the IT field, has done a lot of things in the IT field. When we hired him, when we were recruiting him, he was making about $240,000. There's no way we were going to pay that amount of money at the sewer district. We were able to recruit him because of all of the things that we were doing and how we position ourselves. And we paid him $80,000 less than what he made at this private organization. So we became an employer of choice. We did win the award in 2015 as an employer of choice. We were the North Coast 99 winners for 2015. Our CFO won the CFO of the Year for government and organizations. I was one of the finalists for HR Executive of the Year. That was a Crane's indication. We won several diversity awards at the sewer district year after year. And we won other awards like the ESPY Awards for our internship program and a lot of other awards. The reason I bring all that up, and not that I did all of that myself, is that we became an employer of choice. We became an employer that people were not only interested in working because of all of the things that we provided so far as benefits, but we finally did the organizational change component at the sewer district where it allowed people to really be interested in what we did and in our organization, and they weren't your typical recycled employees. So that's something that we were very, very proud of. And lastly, our benefit structure. So I told you about our benefits and the problems we were having with our broker, but we were able to design our benefit structure where it really addressed the needs of the employees. So one thing that I'll bring out is that there was our dental coverage, which really didn't lend itself to good coverage for young families. We were able to work with our unions. We were able to work with some of our senior leaders and some of our employees to really redesign that. So I tell you all that because I do believe that in this position as a Chief Talent Officer, that is my job. My job is to bring a certain professionalism to this particular position, but to begin to design our employment and employee practices around recruiting and retaining the best of the best. Whether that is through the portal of training and development, our benefits, our compensation, any aspect that HR touches. And so I believe that that's really where this Chief Talent Officer is really a lot different than just a regular Director of Human Resources. Because I believe the Chief Talent Officer, as I understand from my superiors, we want to enact that change in the organization. We want to make the county an employer of choice. We want people to be knocking on the door to try to work here. And that is something that I do bring to the table. So let me talk very briefly, and I definitely want to allow there to time for questions. So how do I operate as a Chief Talent Officer or Director of HR, or whatever title you want to stow on me? One, I operate under 4 pillars, and my staff has come to understand this. The first is project management. We will effectively project manage everything that we need to project manage. There's so many times that we miss things because we really haven't project managed well. So we will effectively project manage. Each HR staff will be trained on project management. They will be accountable for using project management. 2, communication management. Sometimes in the HR world, we do HR to people. We don't look at what the needs of our stakeholders are and help stakeholders through the lens of HR to get done what they need to get done. Part of that is that we don't communicate well. And so when we come out with a policy or procedure, we say, here's the policy and procedure, and you get this note from HR, and then all of a sudden everyone has to comply. Well, we want to make sure that we communicate well with our stakeholders. Part of your project management is that we want to make sure that we identify all of our stakeholders. Number 3, relationship management. Very important. I mean, we are HR. We should be managing relationships. And number 4 pillar is financial management. The impact of decisions in HR typically are linked to some type of finance. So we have to be able to understand that, and we have to be able to manage that. And so we will be working with the Office of Budget and Management to make sure that we're doing that. Lastly, I want to ensure that we are introducing efficiencies in everything that we do. When I came here, and I think my first 3 weeks here, I had sat down with probably, I want to say 10 to 15 of my peers. And there were a lot of things that we talked about, but one of the things we talked about were the inefficiencies in HR. The average time to fill for a job is 6 months. I think that's I'll say it this way, I think it's interesting. We want to make sure that we're reaching those efficiencies. We want to make sure that that time comes down to a respectable time. So working with IT and making sure that our systems, our information systems are up to where they need to be, working with other stakeholders to make sure that we're addressing those inefficiencies. We want to build relationships. I talked about relationship management, but we definitely want to build relationships. There are some strained relationships in HR. We want to make sure that we do that. We do know, I do know, that I guess it's been a struggle between HR and the PRC. I've had, I think, 2 meetings right now with Councilwoman Conwell and also Rebecca from the PRC. So we are working on ensuring that relationship is strong and understanding that we are moving in the same direction as it relates to hiring and retaining employees. Lastly, we want to, and through my leadership, we're going to bring the HR skill level up. I do understand that there are a lot of people in HR currently, and there are a lot of good people in HR, and I do mean that they're good people. But if you're in HR, you have to understand HR, and you have to be able to provide that service at a very high level when it comes to HR. So just very briefly, those are my plans for the future, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Council President. You kind of started talking about it. Can you elaborate a little bit more on your understanding of the responsibilities between HR and the PRC?
Councilwoman Brown, I won't claim to know all of what we're supposed to do versus all of what they're supposed to do. I do know at this time, this is my 5th week, but I do know that the PRC, very valuable relationship we have to build with the PRC. And our goal is to ensure that we're hiring the best of the best in a timely fashion. And they have their role, okay? And their role being that, you know, they develop tests for classified positions. They develop job specs for classified positions. They have a role in ensuring that if there are complaints from employees, whether they be classified or unclassified, that they can go to the PRC for certain things. So I won't claim to know all the aspects of that, but I do know what I think is important, Councilwoman Brown, is that we have to work together because we are county employees trying to hire the best of the best and trying to retain the best employees.
Thank you. With regards to training, you mentioned that you want to train the entire HR staff. Who would execute that training, and when do you anticipate having the entire staff trained?
Councilwoman Brown, I can't give you a date of when I'll have the training completed. We haven't done a thorough gap analysis yet, so I can't give you that. There will be a combination of training. There'll be the training through probably some vendors because a lot of the training I could train on, but I just won't have the time. And there'll be a lot of me training some of the staff on certain things.
Okay, so if we bring in an outside vendor, we might incur some additional expenses?
We may.
Okay. And last but not least, you mentioned a respectable time, and we're currently at 6 months. Is that 6-month frame from posting to hire or close to hire? And I guess the second part would be, what would be a respectable time?
Great question. The 6 months, from what I understand, is from personal request submitted to offering the candidate a position. So it's not even the candidate on site. Okay. A respectable time, really you should be able to hire someone in a month and a half from the time that you post a job to the time that you make an offer. Now, whether a candidate comes in at that time is, you know, a person could be out of town and need 4 weeks or 6 weeks before they start. But from the time that you post a job to the time that you offer that job, a month and a half should be the max.
Thank you, Mr. President. And my first question is to the administration, probably to Director Krause. It's as to the title. The charter uses the term Human Resources Director. We've heard the title put forward of Chief Talent Officer. Are we able to use whatever name we want as long as the person performs the duties specified in the charter?
That would be my understanding. I think he's appear in front of you as the director for purpose of the charter confirmation.
But for purposes of conceptualizing what we want the person to do and where he wants to take the county forward, the Chief Talent Officer is a better description. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And to Director Dykes, I'd like to congratulate you on your being nominated for this very important position. And the one area that I'd like to discuss with you is around the county's pay equity effort. And as you know, our new government came together from several other governments that had very different pay structures and very different human resources systems, and we're still in the process of trying to develop a system that is fair and equitable. And generally, when you deal with compensation issues and the fact that there's some people who are starting for salaries considerably higher than people who have been here for a long time, and we're trying to move toward more performance-based compensation rather than just how long have you been here. My question is if you could tell us what your vision is as to how that process will unfold, and how long do you think it would take to get us to a system that's pretty close to equitable across the board?
Councilman Miller, again, I can't give a time period in which we will get there. But what I will tell you is that compensation is always a sensitive issue in every organization. And from my brief time here, there doesn't seem to be a comprehensive plan of how to get to wherever it is we need to get to. There's a couple of things we need to do first. First, we have to be able to define, what does equity mean? Does equity mean in comparison to other counties? Does equity mean in comparison to employees in same classifications? What exactly does equity mean? So we've got to find a way to define that. After we do that, then we can put together a comprehensive plan that says, here's how we're going to approach it. And here's the time period in which, and the costs. As remember, one of my pillars was financial management. Here's the cost that it's going to take us to get there. So I'm not trying to avoid your question. It's just that there's so much more work to do before I can answer your question. We have to also determine if we want to be an organization that leads or lags the market, whatever market that is that we're trying to compare ourselves to. Do we want to pay market? So there are a lot of questions that must be answered before I can more adequately address your question.
Mr. Chairman, Director, by way of follow-up, I would just note that that we went out, we got a consultant named Gallagher that did a pay equity study. I think a very good one, and they were looking at defining equity, and they essentially said it needed to be a combination of those two areas that you mentioned, and my basic outlook on this is that you're absolutely right, that there has to be a comprehensive plan, and that we have to think about doing this as a coordinated and step-by-step process over a number of years. And I think that developing that plan within the near future should be an important goal, and I urge you to make it so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilman Miller. Next we have up Councilman Schron, and then Jones and Conwell, then Greenspan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are you credentialed by SHRM?
No.
Do you have SHRM?
I do not have the SHRM certification.
Are you a member of SHRM?
I am a member of SHRM. I'm a member of the local chapter, national chapter, and Lake County chapter.
Okay. Are you going to work towards that SHRM credential? Because I think that's usually almost like a credential that shows up on accountants and auditors and all kinds of stuff.
Probably not. I mean, it's a very important credential. Let me start off by saying that. But it's a test. And so I have no plans of working towards it at this point. Right now, my plans is to finish my executive MBA at Cleveland State. At some point in the future, I may take the test, yes.
Because it is obviously a test like an accountant takes a test and everybody else from that standpoint. There's a phrase, at least as I've heard it, and I don't know, you maybe can comment on, hire slow but fire fast in HR. Any comments in regards to that?
Well, I think it's a great...
I mean, 6 months might be stretching the hiring slow part to its nth degree, but...
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Yes, I think the time that you should take in hiring, making the right decisions up front, will allow you to, number one, you probably won't have to fire, but that needs to be done. And what that slogan really is about, you know, the criticalness that you put on the process for hiring the right person takes time. And it takes 6 months, but it takes time. And so I agree with the slogan. Again, you know, time periods I won't speak to, but I do agree with the slogan.
Yeah, unfortunately, in the public sector, it's a little harder the second half of the slogan. But it's not healthy, obviously, to have bad actors in regards to an organization. What is your ideas or thoughts as to how best to proceed in a fair and equitable way to make sure that if it's time for to move on, that you've fulfilled that for the best interest of the entire county?
Well, part of HR's responsibility is to have that dialogue that under that communication management, my pillar, and to help people to realize that maybe this is not for you. And I know that people may sort of smirk at that, But we did that very successfully for 7.5 years at the sewer district. First, we gave people all the help they needed in order to be successful. But then there came a point in time where you have to make a decision whether this job is for you or not. Just to speak to that from my most recent experience, when I walked into the sewer district, there were 4 or 5 lawsuits based on the terminated employees. We did not win all those lawsuits. But from the time that I arrived and introduced the philosophy of human capital being our priority, we did not have another lawsuit when it came to terminating employees, and we terminated a number of employees because they weren't doing their jobs. So my comment to you is that, you know, our job first is to, once the employee is on, our job is to try to make them as successful as we can. And that can go through a lot of different things, whether it's training, whether it's ensuring that the expectation is clear, making sure their managers are the appropriate managers to be managing the people. But then it comes to a point where we have done all we could do that we have to transition out. And we will transition out the right way.
Were you at the sewer district when the corruption was there and individual were involved with that? And did you?
No, I was not. I was brought in right after that.
Okay, so you didn't see that coming, obviously, then, in that respect. You probably had to fix some of the issues in regards to that, I would think. Credibility gets waned. You indicated that project management was the first item on your list of activities. Mm-hmm. Is that a software-driven solution, the way the ERP system is that you referred to? Or is that just a mechanical system you're keeping? Good project management to me means it can either be a digital one that you're tracking all the way along on a process, or what do you mean by project management?
Okay, so there are 2 parts of project management. There's the philosophy and the process of project managing, ensuring that you are addressing all of your stakeholders before you make a decision, ensuring that you're collecting data so you can be driven, or your solution can be driven by your data. So there's the philosophy and the process of project management. So I mean the process and the philosophy. There is a place for the information technology. And hopefully working with Scott, we can find whatever that project management software is to help us to facilitate that digitally.
Were you involved with the installation of the Oracle system, or were you the recipient of having it already been installed?
It was already installed when I was there, but when I was at RTA, I was involved. I was actually a part of the planning team when we installed PeopleSoft, which is now Oracle. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So you envision perhaps being an active role, because HR and financials are 2 of the most important elements of the ERP system when we get there. Are you envisioning getting there with Mr. O'Rourke?
I do more than envision. I plan on sitting at that table.
Good, because I think that's a critical component in that regard. You talked about market and market driving wages and salaries. Any comments about using third party to pay our salary base for any positions here, or whether that needs to be substantiated by our own internal dollars?
I really don't have a comment on that right now. I just don't know enough about what's going on, but I'll be willing to get back with you later on an answer.
Any thoughts about using the private sector to pay public sector dollars salaries?
I really haven't thought about it. I'm gonna be honest with you, and you'll find that out about me. When I haven't thought about something, I won't try to make it up. I haven't thought about it. I'd like to have time to think about it.
Last one, how about HSAs? What's been your involvement with administering health savings accounts on behalf of the workforce?
None of the organizations that I have worked for had health savings account. We did counts that we had flexible spending accounts, but we didn't have health savings accounts. I know a lot about them. I've done a lot of research on it. Something that definitely I think is valuable to entertain.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Jones.
Thank you. Mr. Dykes, you mentioned in your opening comments that efficiency, you would like to have efficiency in all that you do. Over the last 5 years, as I've heard that word, sometimes it hasn't always been positive from my perspective. We look to be more efficient, sometimes at a cost in terms of effectiveness. Can you speak to how you envision efficiency and your philosophy on that balance between efficiency and effectiveness?
Well, Councilman Jones, I agree. I think that if you're going to be efficient, you really are going to have to be effective. And I'll go back to my pillar, my project management. If you do project management the right way, you're going to realize both the efficiency and the effectiveness. And so I do believe they go hand in hand. And again, I think that is something that we have to define as a department, and we have to define as an organization exactly what we're looking for. But again, I think that they go hand in hand.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilwoman Conwell.
Thank you. Through the chair to Director Dykes. This is a spinoff from Councilwoman Brown's question. The initial HR director from the previous, at the beginning of government structure, stated that the hiring process took longer than usual because of background checks, turnarounds from downstate. Have you had the experience from the sewer district in dealing with this? And how long did it take for the turnaround?
Now, are you speaking, Councilwoman Conwell, are you speaking
PCI
directly
check.
to the background check?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I've had experience at the sewer district, and it took 3 days. But the difference is that we hired an outside consultant to do that work because they are experts in what they do. They do it every single solitary day. Okay. And that's their business. And so that's why candidates were able to log on to a website, put their information in. 3 days after, we would get a report. And that was the criminal, that was the education, that was the work history.
Well, just letting you know that was what was stated to us from the beginning of inception, that it took so long from downstate to do that, and that kind of adds to that 6-month time period. So just in moving forward, maybe we could talk about the costs that a consultant would take for that. My second question would be, what type of budgetary responsibility did you carry in your previous assignment, and how well have you kept within that budget?
So, Councilwoman Conwell, at the sewer district, I was responsible for, of course, the operational side of HR. In other words, all of the salaries, the indirect compensation, and all of our contracts as they related to HR. My involvement was I was responsible for it, and we never were over budget.
All right. Third question would be, having to deal with others in order to complete your job. Tell us what you do to ensure that you meet the work commitments you make to them.
And again, that's part of the project management that I've been practicing over the last few years. And I think that what's important is that as you're working with others, we have to first define, what are we working towards? And we have to make sure that we commit to whatever those outcomes are. So my commitment will be set up front with my stakeholders, and we will follow through accordingly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Greenspan.
Great, thank you, Mr. President. So it sounds like you've been in an environment where you reduced the hiring process from 6 months to 42 days, correct?
4 months to 42
4
days.
months to 42 days. So we're in a horrible predicament, as you know. Maybe our complicating factor is the interaction with the PRC, and there's been confusion and discussion about how the PRC and HR are supposed to work together, which is obviously a relationship you inherit. But okay, but so how is it? And you've met with the PRC, you've been around here a little while. What is it your expectation, or how are you going to manage that? My colleagues are loving that my microphone's going dead. How is it that you are able to, or what are your thoughts on managing that relationship, understanding the role? The charter is very specific as to what each other's roles and responsibilities are. Have you had a chance to review the charter, understand what each other's roles are, get an understanding of the current operations to understand how to bridge the challenges that exist?
I have not, Councilman Greenspan, I have not intimately reviewed the charter. I have read a good portion of it. But let me try to address your initial question. In meeting with Rebecca and in meeting with some of the people at the PRC, I do believe that our objectives are the same. Being able to communicate effectively is so important. So let me just give you an example. My third week here, there was an administrative assistant job, senior administrative assistant job. And one of my stakeholders, one of the managers in the county, called and said, look, I just talked with the PRC. They said it's going to take 6.5 months to fill this job. I said, okay, tell me a little bit about the job. I hung up with that gentleman and I placed a call to Rebecca. Rebecca involved, I believe his name is George, in the conversation and put me on speaker. We were able to walk through the process so I can get an understanding. I made some recommendation based on my experience of testing, development, validation, and all of that. Instead of June for a testing date, we have a testing date February 8th, which was yesterday, I believe. So, leveraging my knowledge of HR, communicating effectively, that's how I expect to work with the PRC. Not stepping on their feet, understanding what their role is, and they have a very important role here at the county. But bringing my experience, my education to it, I think that we can have a lot of those successes in the future.
Okay. And I appreciate that and I respect that. I just would encourage you, I'm not lecturing you, but I would encourage you to read the charter specifically as it relates to your roles are defined in the charter as a fundamental director of the county, as are the PRC's roles as were amended in a charter amendment. So I would just encourage you to read that and understand each other's roles to effectively navigate. We've had some challenges here with those relationships, so it's important to understand the fundamental roles. Current staffing, you've been here about a month. I'm not talking about personality, staffing levels. What are you and how do you envision a potential restructuring or redirection of resources to meet objectives?
I actually have already submitted and my restructuring plan has already been approved. We will be hiring some leaders to be over the various areas in HR, which will allow me to bring people's skills up a little bit quicker than if I were just doing it by myself. I mean, I'm willing to share that organizational structure chart with you if you'd like to see it at some point in the future. I believe I did share it with Councilwoman Conwell at some point.
Okay, and I was going to ask if that had been communicated and shared. Mm-hmm. And yes, I would like to see a copy of it. In your plan, are these new positions? Are you adding to the head count in order to achieve your objectives?
I am operating within the budget that has been allowed, with the exception of asking for a little bit extra money to bring a current employee that is interim over to HR, and then a little bit more money for another key position that I believe that we need to hire as it relates to benefits and wellness.
Yeah, and understanding that our budget right now, as it's prepared, has very little capacity for any additional hires, unless we, of course, look down to below the line items. But it'll be interesting to see how that integrates in with our current plan. We've had issues with secondary employment in the past, insofar as defining what secondary employment is. Not a question that's typically been asked of candidates, but do you currently have any secondary employment that needs to be reported to the county?
I do not.
Okay. There's in the ethics ordinance, and where one's been presented, we're in the midst of further defining roles as it relates to the delineation of HR-related matters versus Inspector General-related matters. Have you had an opportunity to even review the first ethics ordinance yet to understand additional roles and responsibilities?
No, I have not.
Okay. Once again, I'd encourage you to review that, because further roles are defined there. And my last, sorry, two questions. So one question has to do with training and development. And right now the county does very little, if any, training and development of its employees, which I think it's something that's critical to retaining employees, for one thing, but also it's critical to engaging your staff and your employees to provide better quality customer service. What has been your experience insofar as training and development of existing staff that you have? For example, have you sought the assistance or guidance or training for the American Society of Training and Development, as an example?
In the past, I have.
Okay.
My position on training and development is, I agree with you. I think it's very, very critical. I mean, when you look at one of the things, and there was a survey, I think it was done in 2010, and there was a listing of what's really important to employees, and the survey spanned private, public, nonprofit organizations. And surprisingly, what was at the top, the number one thing that people said that they would like from their employer was, one, recognition, and number two was the ability to learn beyond where they were. Number three was increase in pay. So I agree. I think it's important to have a plan to ensure that we are training people, not just to retain people, but to allow people to do their jobs more efficiently and effectively. So I think it's very important.
Okay, and in your plan, did you outline a training and development component?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I look forward to reading that. And the last question I have has to do with negotiating collective bargaining agreements. Obviously, we have 30 plus collective bargaining units, and that number is growing. Have you had significant experience in negotiating collective bargaining agreements, and then what do you view your role with the county in negotiating those agreements?
From the sewer district, I was the chief negotiator for our last round of collective bargaining agreements. In the number of years since the sewer district was established, every collective bargaining, every time we went to bargain, there was a mediator or a fact finder that had to be brought in. A fact finder had to be brought in order to settle the contracts. In the 30-plus history of the sewer district, up until this last negotiations, that happened every single solitary time. One of the successes that Julius Chach pronounced at one of the board meetings was that this was the first time in the history of the sewer district that we were able to decide on contracts without taking it to a fact finder. So I have experience being the chief negotiator at the collective bargaining table, and my experience has been very successful. My role here, I'd really have to talk to law. I know that they are involved a lot with that. I would like my role to be significant at the bargaining table because, again, I understand the totality of human resources and what needs to happen. So I'd like to be a participant, but again, I haven't spoken with law about that.
And one further, how many employees does the sewer district have?
750.
Was that the largest company that you, what did RTA, or what was the largest entity you oversaw human resources?
That I oversaw human resources would be at RTA, and at that time, before the massive layoff, they were at 3,600.
And between sewer district and RTA, how many collective bargaining units were there? And just round numbers. I mean,
7.
7 per.
3 at the sewer district, and 3 or 4 at RTA.
Okay,
I can't remember.
Great. All right, thank you.
All right, Councilwoman Simon.
Thank you. Oh, congratulations on your nomination to this position. I have just a comment. I think the ORC requires us to use BCI for the background checks. That was just a follow-up.
Okay.
So you can take a look at that. But I'm curious, how and where did you get an understanding of your role as the HR director as it relates and interacts with PRC? If you didn't have a chance to read that section of the charter which defines that, how is it that you're even interacting day to day with PRC, and where would that knowledge come from of what your understanding at this point is?
Well, one of the things I said is that I didn't have a chance to read the entire charter. That's what I said. And so I was able to read portions of the charter, didn't get through all of it, didn't study it, but along with my peers in law, Councilwoman Conwell, we've had, I believe, 2 meetings with PRC, with her leading those meetings. So that's where some of my understanding came from.
Okay, fair enough. The other question I have is that our county ordinance requires the executive, when submitting candidates to us, provide us with a list of individuals who applied for the position. So in your case, with your submission, we should have received an entire list of everybody who applied. We did not receive that list, and in fact, the answer to the question they put down was a private search firm. I wanted to know what your opinion is on that with regard to hiring and not revealing applicants and transparency in this context.
Well, Councilwoman Simon, I'm not sure exactly what happened. If you're asking me what my opinion is for using an external firm?
No, about hiring practices and being transparent about people who applied as being a public entity. You know, from RTA, you probably had this exposure of people who applied, making that public and having a transparent process for hiring. That's my question, what your opinion is on that.
I think we should be very transparent.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may ask the executive why we did not receive a list of the applicants for this position, or his opponent, whoever over there can respond if the chair would allow that.
Is someone prepared to respond?
I mean, I think Councilwoman Simon's correct. It was a private search firm. That's a policy, an administrative policy decision that was used in this regard. And there are other instances of administrative policy, and it's certainly administrative policy, I think, is always updated and is always looking at various things. So I can just, the only thing I'm going to say is that it was an administrative policy to use the firm.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Krause, the question isn't a policy to decide to use a search firm. The question is the requirement coming from our law was to provide us with a list of those who applied, and that was accessible from the search firm you retained.
If I might, Mr. President, in the request of the search firm, they view that information as proprietary, as part of the work that they do in casting a net for candidates, that they themselves have a non-disclosure policy that you know, we need to respect. I mean, they view that information as proprietary to their business model.
Is that something that we have in a contract, or?
It's standard in that it's standard in the search firm world. I don't know as if that would be something that they'd be willing to waive. Contractually going forward, something that given the comments from Councilman Simon, that from a contractual standpoint, if we're asked to engage again, this issue could be raised. But they do view this information as propriety, affects their business model, and being able to actually attract people to see their interest in filling a role such as this. So that's the obstacle that we have in providing that information. It's deemed proprietary on their end, and so it's not. They're able to provide the numbers of people, but they're not able to identify the actual individuals. So I can share, Councilwoman, at least the volume of people that they interviewed and sought. But that's really from in the questions to be able to comply with the ordinance. That all I'm able to provide are numbers, not names.
Councilwoman.
Thank you for your answer. I'm sure you wouldn't do this in your hiring practice, right? You would make sure that the ordinance that you need to follow would be followed.
That would be part of
Correct.
my responsibility.
Thank you. But I don't understand why the executive's office would agree as a public entity to go to a private search firm in contravention of what's required of them under our ordinance. It's something that I think this body needs to look at, what, if anything, we can do to make sure that what we passed is adhered to. For there was a reason for that. We're a public entity, and the public needs to see what's going on with hiring practices, especially at this level.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Gallagher.
Mr. Law Director, I was wondering who on the executive team saw these names? Who saw the list?
I don't think any. I think with the executive team, as I understand it, that names that made it to the interview process was the extent of the knowledge. I don't think anybody on the executive team has been given the names of all the people that applied for the position. It's my best.
So we've contracted with a company that says here's your one candidate.
No, that's not.
And trust us.
No, they as I understand it, they provided a number of names.
And who saw those names? Because I believe that's all the councilwoman's asking, and we are a separate but equal form of government. And I can't understand if we have to go into executive session to see the names. And I understand the secrecy of the candidates that were unsuccessful. But don't we have an obligation to our constituents to make sure that a private company isn't saying this is your candidate?
the names of the people that were interviewed that we will get to you. I thought the question were the applicants for the position. I think that was, but.
Mr. Gallagher and Mr. Chair, the ordinance requires a cumulative list of individuals who applied for the position, and the answer we were given is private search firm. So we should have been provided all of the individuals who applied. And you know, when a private entity is contracting with a public entity, they rise to the level and are subject to a records request. So I just don't understand.
No, I've given. I mean, the explanation on the specific names is that the search firm deems that to be proprietary. The names that were given to the county, that I will get to you. There's no reason that those names were not those. I don't know how many. Whatever those were, Mr. President, I will provide you that information. But the list of the names that are still in their possession, I don't have, and I don't have the ability to get that. I am able to get you the names of the people that were actually interviewed for the position.
The ordinance requires a list of those who applied, not who we decided to interview.
Okay.
I can appreciate the juxtaposition that it places the county and the private firm that's doing the search. But I would suggest in the future that we do this in-house, which falls to you, Mr. Dykes. I would suggest that if we are incapable of finding the best candidate available, which we've done in the past without outside firms, would you suggest that that's the way that we go? Because we are a government entity and we have a responsibility to those that we represent. What say you?
So let me say two things, and from my experience with search firms, people don't typically apply. Search firms, they go out and they seek. So it's not like they post a job and there are 15, 20, 100 people that apply for a job. They have a data bank of candidates that they have collected from various other searches at the executive level that they've spoken with, and they go out and they tap on the shoulders of those people to see if they're interested. So typically that's the way a search firm works. And I was on the other side of the table with this search firm, but every search firm I've worked with, that's the way that they work. So there wouldn't be a number of applicants that have applied for the job, because that's not what search firms do. You don't pay them all that money for them to post a job where they get a bunch of applicants.
But this job was posted. No?
Okay. Well, I'm just saying from the search firm perspective.
I'm saying from my position. Well, what do you think? What's the best way to go forward? Because we had a posting. We had people evidently, I would assume, apply. But we don't know.
So let me answer your second question. As I told the councilwoman, I do believe that, if there's an ordinance or if there's a law, if there's a policy, we're going to follow it. Okay? But I will also say that until people's skills get up to a certain level, there's a lot of justification why we would use a search firm in several cases. But you have my guarantee that if we're going to do a process, that we're going to follow whatever guidelines, policy, ordinance that is outlaid for us to follow.
I think I really hit one question, and it's this. Sorry to drag it out, but you mentioned an already existing interim that you want to bring on. I think I know who that is, but who is that, and where in your new slotting does that person go that you're asking extra money?
So Ed is someone that you are very familiar with, and he will be my Director of Human Resources and responsible for employee and labor relations.
If you could show us what Mr. Greenspan asked for, that would be helpful.
I can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Gallagher. Now we're going to go back to Councilwoman Conwell, then Jones, and then Schron.
Through the chair to the director, tell us about a time where you where you disagreed with the objectives or the direction of a team you were on, and how did you handle this?
Good dialogue a lot of times brings disagreement. It's not everyone sitting on a team is going to be on the same page. And so there have been several times, even as late as or as early as today, where there was a disagreement. I did not disagree with the direction in which the team wanted to go. I do believe that we have to continue to keep what our objective is in front of us. You know, our objective is to serve the people that we are responsible to serve. And so as long as it's not a law or it's not a negative financial impact and there are some other measurements, I'm okay with saying, okay, well, here's my opinion, and if it's not a do or die, of being able to back off of it and say, we can go in this direction. So to answer your question more succinctly, I think that in the HR world, there's a lot of disagreements because people want to do what they want to do, how they want to do it. Our job is, and my job as the chief HR person, is to understand where they want to go. And if we can't come to some agreement, and as long as it's not violating a policy or an ordinance or something like that, helping that stakeholder to obtain what they're trying to obtain the way that they need to obtain it.
Okay, second question would be, tell us about an innovation that you've introduced in your work area in your previous employment.
The one thing that I can speak to that we won a recent award is the process in which we developed and the program in which we developed for interns. We all know sitting here that a lot of times interns are brought into organizations and they shuffle paper and things of that sort. Well, we were able to develop an internship program at the sewer district that again won the ESPY award. But it really focused on career exploration of the students. The success of that was that 95% of our students, after they finish their college courses, were able to locate a job in their field as a result of spending 3 to 4 years as an intern. And it wasn't always in our organization, it were in other organizations. So that's very innovative in public government organizations and something that we're very, very proud of, and I'm very, very proud of.
And what does SB stand for?
I'd have to get that to you, but some of the recipients of the ESPY Awards has been Sherwin-Williams, Avery Dennison, Cleveland Clinic, various others.
Doesn't mean small business.
My last question during this round is, tell us your experience in working with others of diverse backgrounds from yours, and how do you handle differences that come from different backgrounds?
So when people use the word diversity, sometimes it's good to dive deeper into what does that mean, because a lot of times when people use diversity, they look at race and they look at gender. My definition of diversity expands way beyond that. I grew up in Cleveland Heights. A person is diverse. I grew up in Garfield. I grew up in a 2-parent family. A person is diverse might be from a single-parent family. Along with the race and along with the gender, my experience has been that I have always encouraged and facilitated diverse groups. And one of the things we're doing in HR right now is that we have some projects that we're working on. And so we have a recruitment and retention project. What I've instructed the staff is that we need to make sure that that committee is very diverse. So we need someone that's from outside of HR. We need someone that's from outside of the talent acquisition or the recruitment area. We need someone. So my experience is that I really, really embrace diversity, but my definition of diversity is very broad, but I promote it and embrace it.
Thank you.
Very good. Back to Councilman Jones.
Right. Mr. Dykes, our county has just completed our own racial disparity study. And getting to this point, and racial disparity was found, a significant disparity was found. But getting to this point, we had a lot of support and education from Tiffany Jordan from the Sewer District and their disparity study efforts. The City of Cleveland certainly has completed one. And all three institutions basically share the same community. We overlap. Tell me, with the completion of the study in the Sewer District, did it have an impact on your department? And if so, can you share with us what insights you learned from that, and then what impact it had on your department?
So, Councilman Jones, yes, it had an impact on every department because how we look for vendors and how we bring on vendors was impactful across the organization. So that's really what the study focused on, allowing those opportunities for those small business groups to not only bid, but bid successfully on contracts. But carrying it a step further, although it wasn't a part of the actual study at the Sewer District, there was an initiative that Julius Chach and I put together that we want to ensure that there is, and I'm just taking it to a different level, that there is diversity in consideration in all of our hires and all of our promotions. So the Sewer District, and what we used to say is that the Sewer District should look like the community that we serve. And we worked for 7 years at that. If you're aware of the diversity awards, I think for 3 years in a row, the Sewer District won the diversity award for our board and also for senior leadership. And that permeated down throughout the organization. So that was something that we took very seriously. Again, there's a portion of that based on a study that really focuses on the contracting and how we make opportunities available for those small businesses. But we took it a step further because we just didn't want to focus on the contracts. We wanted to focus on our employees and what our employee population looked like. And that's what was my experience.
Thank you.
All right. And then we finally, so far, we have Councilman Shaw again.
Thank you. We just had a little discussion with Councilwoman Simon about the names and stuff in regards to the position to which you are being considered, and you clearly made a definitional distinction on those who applied for an open position and those that were looked upon by a headhunter to fill. If we were posting a position, you would expect that everybody in this community should have seen that, would you not? I mean, this position had to have gotten posted. Is that a correct statement? And I am.
Who's speaking?
We hear a voice from the. I'm expecting it actually to kind of come from the executive's office. This had to be posted, wasn't it?
My understanding, it was posted.
Come on, you got to be able to say yes or no. That's not. Was it posted?
Posted.
So there has to be names that would have applied. Would you expected that?
If it was posted, I I would expect that, yes.
Okay, let's go. Should positions of the public nature be posted? Wow, this shouldn't be a hard one. I'm sorry, but
Well, I guess if that is the guidelines or the policy of this organization, then yes.
yeah, I'm not saying we're going to find a candidate that we want.
I'm not saying that you're saying that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that if that is the guidelines or the policy of this organization or the ordinance, then yes. But there are strategic talent searches. I mean, it happens in private businesses all the time. It happens in some government businesses. In some governments, it happens in nonprofits. And so not to, and the responsibility of the search firm is to provide a diverse.
Please don't mix the two questions. I didn't ask you that yet. I'm going to get there.
Okay.
I would like, and I know Ms. Simon would like to see the posting, because we have another one right after this. It's going to fall in the same category. I'd like to see the posting and who applied. Might not have been a candidate that you folks, that anybody chose, but there should be a posting and there should be candidates. As happens quite often, if you don't find a candidate, then you maybe simultaneously or at that point go out and use a search firm to find the candidate. Is that the way you would find most HR?
No, for executive positions.
You would start with HR with a search firm regardless.
I thought your question was, is that what I would find in most HR organizations? Yeah. And a lot of HR organizations that I'm familiar with, and my network is broad, senior level positions are very seldom. The search is done through a search firm. I'm sorry, let me turn it around. It's always done through a search firm.
When you looked for senior positions within the sewer department, you would have always used a search firm. You never would have asked the public for the diversity answers that you were getting. You would have actually created the diversity as opposed to using the community.
So let me tell you about the sewer district. When I was hired for the sewer district, I was hired as a result of them using a search firm. When the other senior leaders were hired at the sewer district around the same time I was hired, they used a search firm. Yes. More recently, because we had developed our talent acquisition process, the 3 senior positions that we replaced, Chief Legal Officer, the Chief Information Officer, and my position, we did internally. But before I got there, they used search firms. But again, we were able to establish a process where we were very aggressive in how we search for positions. And so the board at the sewer district agreed to allow us, instead of using a search firm, to search for those chief positions.
And the firm would be paid somewhere between 25 and as much as 50% of the base salary of the candidate they were looking for.
For the first year's salary,
yeah.
Yes.
Right, with the expectation that if that candidate left, there would be some kind of research based in researching for a new candidate using some of those funds.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if the public is aware of that's part of that. Just on a separate track, you talked about the value of the ERP and operational improvement. Is that what I assume you would expect you're going to see from an ERP?
No. The ERP is a tool to allow us to process information, if I can say that. And my peer back there may have a different definition. Our job as an HR department, and my job as the head HR person, is to find those efficiencies through an effective way, even before we get to an ERP system. So if there are 22 steps, and I think I'm almost accurate, on a hiring process, we got to find those efficiencies, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to put 22 steps and allow the ERP system now to manage those steps, because you're still going to have inefficiencies.
But let's assume you found your efficiencies and your effectiveness. It's now part of your HR process.
Mm-hmm.
Is it likely that you will also see a reduction in force either through attrition or some other technique as a result of becoming more efficient and more effective?
I will not say a reduction in force. We can refocus people to do those things that we need them to do that they haven't been able to do because they're marred in paperwork and process steps. There's a lot of things that we need to do in HR to be more strategic. We can't get to those things because we are spending 12 hours a day going through 22 processes just to process something.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And finally, unless someone else has it, and someone does, we'll go to back to Councilman Greenspan and back to Councilman Simon. Be mindful, of course, that we have another confirmation hearing following this one. Councilman Greenspan.
Thank you. The reason this issue of the search firm and the names being submitted is important is you lived in the county long enough to understand the history of employment with the county prior to this government was marred with nepotism and marred with patronage jobs. And that's the history behind it. And that's why this item was listed in an ordinance so we see who applied for the jobs. I believe that hiding behind a private vendor and not providing a list is a workaround to the ethics ordinance. Our inspector general can pull right into that company and get that list. Because if that vendor does business with the county, the ethics the IG has the ability, through probably a council-issued subpoena, to get those names. I don't want to do that, but I want to see the names. I don't know how much more clear our ordinances have been. So, Mr. Triazzi, go get those names, and let's get those submitted. I'm going to ask another question that's very directed to you, Mr. Dykes. Brought to some members' attention that you teach class at Cleveland State. Is that correct?
I do not teach classes at Cleveland State, okay, but I do fill in when they need me to be a guest presenter or anything else that they need me to do, and something that I had agreed to when I started the executive MBA program.
So are you compensated in any way for that work? No. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. And finally, we have Councilwoman Simon.
I'll be very brief. Thank you. What's Ed's position going to be for the interim?
Director of Human Resources / Employee and Labor Relations.
Okay. So is there going to be an actual HR director? Is that you? Or you would, I'm not.
Based on this hearing, that would be me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he has, okay. And then lastly, I just want to hear from you, whoever you're hiring, if you were to get this appointment and be confirmed, would you go through a public process of posting jobs rather than going through a search firm?
My desire, yes. So my desire is to always do what we can do in-house. But I will tell you, Councilman Simon, if until we get to that point where we're confident in the people that are doing the searches, that they're going to be able to reach out and get the best candidate, because that is, it's not a scientific calculation, but that's an art, to be able to talk to people that are already employed, as they did with me, and convince them to apply for a job.
Okay, so you have a commitment that you're going to make that your hiring will be the people who apply. You'll go through a transparent public posting process.
Yes.
Thanks.
All right. It seems to me that if there have been some issues raised, but they're not, as far as I can ascertain, relevant to our consideration of this appointment, but they're important issues. So if there is no I'd like to recommend resolution number 2016-28 to the full council for second reading and adoption or suspension of rules. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the ayes have it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you very much. I was very impressed by your presentation and also by your ability to deal with this very well, you know, we've got a lot of we've learned a lot in the last 5 years, and so I think you know, it was appropriate. But we're glad to have you on board pending your final vote.
Thank you. I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute break in the work session, more or less 5 minutes, and then we'll be back for the second confirmation hearing.